I'm here with Titan Fox of Hammer King to talk about König und Kaiser. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Absolutely brilliant. The only thing is the two dots, they say König, but that is probably the closest I have heard today.
I'll take that. I'll take that as a win. The
Yeah.
album comes out March 22nd on Napalm Records. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time. You're always so kind with your time to talk about your music and your band. And let's start off by going down this road and asking you, for those that haven't been able, that are not as lucky as me, that haven't been able to hear the album, what can fans expect on March 22nd when this album is finally delivered?
Well, in case that you've heard Hammer King albums before, I can say that we have, and I hate it when musicians say it's a mix of album blah and album that and that, but actually it is a bit of a blend of our 21 album Hammer King and the King Demonium album from 22, because we've kept the slightly heavier approach that we had on King Demonium and reverted back to the bigger and maybe catchier hook lines that we used to have on the 21 album. So for us in the band right now, and we are not people who always say the new album is the best. That's really, you can go on the internet and check that. We don't do that. I think we have made one of our best albums this time, and it is very much a spontaneous album. We didn't have much time to do it, but the spirit was great, and we did not feel pressure, although we knew how little work we could probably squeeze into the weeks that we have. But we really, for the first time in years, we were in the rehearsal room absolutely naive, like young people, going for songs, enjoying the process, and then recording demos in a very short time. And because of the short time, I think the album remained very fresh. It came from the heart, from your guts, and not too much from the brain, because it was no time to overthink things. Just go for it and then have a good metal spirit. And I think we will have an album on March the 22nd with 10 songs, out of which you probably should play at least 7 live. And that is a very good quote for us.
Why did you guys have less time? What was the reason behind that shortened period of time?
Well, basically, it is this time it was that we heard through the grapevine that the War Kings might be open to taking us on tour, which happens now. And of course, we were told, if you want to go on tour and you have a new album, that makes the tour more senseful for the band, and it makes it more probable that the other band will say they got some media attention, so let's have this band on tour. So we were asked around the end, towards the end of June, I think, to remember, whether we could deliver an album for a March 24 release. And we said, yeah, of course, we can do that. We had 0 songs by that time, with nothing, only a box of riffs and bits and pieces. But we decided to do that, and we got together in the rehearsal room. And I mean, it sounds very, very relaxed when you think June and the album comes out in March. But you must understand, I mean, you will know that, but people out there might not know that when you want to have an album that is on CD and on vinyl, especially on vinyl, you need to have the album delivered by, I think it was it late October or something around that. So there was not that much time, and you need to be in the studio for 4 or 5 weeks maybe, and so we had to work around Charles Greywolf's schedule as well, because he was quite busy playing with Powerwolf. So the time got shorter and shorter all the time. I said, okay, and what remains? These days are for me, thank you, because we need 5 days for the drums, 2 days for the bass, and so on. And I personally, I never had less time in the studio than this time. And I know on King Demonium, it was killing me to know that there is not much time. And this time, I really didn't care at all. It was just enjoying the music, the joy of recording, of expressing yourself. So we were lucky. It really worked well this time.
When you look beyond the band and you look at the genre of power metal, how do you see the genre of power metal these days? Is it alive and well? Is it becoming a little bit stale? How do you look around and assess the ecosystem that you're in?
I think when metal started really going through the roof in the early 90s, mid 80s, sorry, or early 80s, mid 80s, basically everything that everybody did was brand new. And then after a while, people found out that it was probably the hype was slowing down, and bands started questioning their internal structure. That was around the same time where basically all the big bands, other than Saxon, lost their lead vocalist. They all didn't get along anymore. They all thought that it would be better off on their own, and they were all wrong. And I think during that period when there were replacement vocalists, we also had the downfall of metal. There was grunge, alternative, and whatever came up. And at the same time, more or less forced into the underground, there was a very, very creative period in metal and power metal. I mean, when I listen to the old CDs that used to be part of the magazines, Metal Hammer, whatever we have in Europe, there's been so many bands that were so different from each other. Everybody had their own signature sound, everybody had their own signature style. Things really got away from the standard formula, and after a couple of years, the traditional metal and power metal came back, and I think it's quite big at this moment. I mean, I will see Judas Priest and Saxon and Uriah Heep in a huge arena this summer, and they've never been that big back in the day here. I mean, maybe Priest in the 80s, but other than the 80s, none of these bands had been able to fill places like this. And but when they came back, I think things got slightly, I don't know if that word even exists in English, standardized in a way. So you feel that it's a bit like corporate metal. You know which producer will give you a good album. You will never have an album with a weak sound anymore. I mean, back in the day, there was an album like Born Again from Black Sabbath, where you keep asking yourself, is this pure genius or is it just crap? I mean, it's very, very weird in a way, and you never have that something like this again, because we're all computerized, and things are very much a corporate progress of working. And by this, we have lost a bit and we have gained a bit. I mean, you have like 6 Saxon albums ever since they started with Andy Sneap. Every album was good. Some were better, some were not as good as the others, but they were all very solid. The same goes for the Pretty Maze, the same goes for Judas Priest, the same goes for us. We work with Charles Greywolf and with Jakob Hansen, and you totally know what you will have at the end of the day. So I think we have lost a bit of the adventure and of the romantic side about it, but we've gained stability and reliability, because the bands are very reliable nowadays. You totally know what to get, and maybe the audience knows that, and maybe it's not as wild as it used to be, but it's stable. I mean, the places are packed.
One of the elements that I see in a lot of bands these days, power metal bands specifically, is a little bit of lack of power in the power metal, and a lot of orchestrations, which they're almost using orchestrations to infuse power, but it doesn't infuse power, it infuses volume, but not power. And when I was listening to this record from you guys, it felt almost like a throwback, because there was power in the power metal. Is that an important aspect, that the guitars, drums, vocals, those 3 elements are the driving forces?
I think yes. We were asked a couple of weeks ago, I sadly don't remember who it was, he asked me, what do you think makes Hammer King special? And I said to him, I'm sorry, I can't answer this question. It's like answering to your new wife, am I the best guy you ever had in your life? It's impossible. You can't do that. But I think what makes us different is that we, as you pointed it out, we don't do quite some things that other people do. We don't use orchestration. We do have some sound effects here and there. That might be a deep hum or something behind it when a part changes. There might be an explosion, of course. Everybody did this after Kings of Metal came out, and I mean, that's things that you can use. But otherwise, we have trumpets on the title track, because we wanted to have trumpets to sound like Life of Brian by Monty Python. So that was the plan behind it. But we will never use, never say never, but I think we never use keyboards or orchestration or something like this. It's nothing wrong about it. It's just that we as you said, I think we should be maybe of all the newer sort of image metal bands that are out there, we should be the ones that are maybe most deeply rooted in traditional metal compared to what others do. And the songs can be catchy, they can be big, there's lots of choirs on that. The choirs are all real, we do sing them, that's not bought on choir material or something. But other than that, I think that we would like to be the band that is mostly based in traditional metal compared to what others do.
And piggyback off of that, I thought that the drum and guitar sound on this record was phenomenal. Having last time to put the record together, did that change your approach when it came to recording the drums and guitars?
Actually, we used a different drum kit on this album for the first time because Charles Greywolf bought a drum kit that he wants to use in his own studio, because he says the advantage is I know this drum kit and I can give you a better sound compared to when you bring a drum kit that I don't know by heart. So maybe that's a bit of a difference here. When it comes to the guitar sound, I must say that's all been up to Jakob Hansen, who did the guitar sound. We gave him the very raw guitar tracks, and he does basically reamp everything into the sound that he envisions. And I can say that when we worked with Jakob for the first time in 21, he gave us a mix that we totally loved from the very second we heard it. When we did Kingdomonium, it took us maybe 4 times of little adjustment until we got there where we wanted to be. And this time, I said to the guys in the band, hopefully he will have a sound again that we totally agree upon in the first second, because we just don't have the time to fiddle around. And honestly, the sound came, we heard it, and we said, okay, that's it. So that was, again, one of these moments where you get a song and you absolutely change only slightest nuances, whatever. And this time, as you said it, I mean, he's got a brilliant drum sound, the guitars are really, really powerful, and nevertheless it leaves lots of space for the vocals, which in my book is very important, because we are very much a vocal band in a way when it comes to metal. And yeah, I love the production.
The production is really good, and what it does is it gives the record a live feel. I honestly I've never seen you guys live, unfortunately, but listening to this record, I have the impression that what I heard on the record is not going to be that far off of a representation of what I'm going to get live.
Absolutely. I mean, there is some parts where we do have guitars that are not that are more than 2 guitars sometimes, but compared to what other bands do, we don't have many parts where there is more than 2 guitars. Usually when there's twin leads, we sometimes leave away the rhythm guitars entirely. And well, on this album, we didn't do that as much as maybe on the 21 album, but we do that every now and then. And therefore, as you said, it's pretty much an album that you totally can recreate on stage, and it will very, very much be as you get it on the album. Yeah.
Now, your vocals on this record, it's a trifecta. I mentioned the drums, the guitars, and now it's time for your vocals. Your vocals on this record were phenomenal. You're aging like a fine wine. How do you explain that?
First of all, I'm going the unpopular route of saying thank you and I agree. I mean, usually you should say, oh, really? Do you think so? Honestly, I totally agree, and I don't totally know why. A couple of minutes ago, I was over there on the couch and I had this thought in my mind. Well, it took you so many years, but finally your vocals are getting better all the time. And I am in that age where it should be getting weaker, actually. And therefore, I mean, look at Biff from Saxon. He's one of the other guys who never stopped getting cooler when it comes to singing. I mean, he was a charismatic frontman. He was never much of a singer in the 80s. He has started getting very good post 2002 or something. And in my case, I don't know. I mean, I do not practice overly much, but I try to sing frequently, and I try to sing different things all the time. I have a mixtape in my car with Burning Heart from Survivor on it, and then We Are the World from the Live Aid thing with gazillions of different vocalists. and I try to follow all of their styles as far as I can. And when it comes to the ladies, you sometimes can't do that, but otherwise I try to do that, and then just
So hold on. So when you're listening to "We Are the World," are you trying to do the specific voices of the different singers as you singing along?
yes. I mean, Huey Lewis is quite. It's possible to duplicate him. He is very raspy, and you can't take it too high, otherwise you will not do anything at all during this day. But that's possible. Steve Perry is tricky. What I can't really do is Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder, because they are probably their soul-influenced African-American phrasing is so off the rhythms that you use in metal and rock. I've never matched what they do. It's just too free for me, but I try to just find things that are interesting to learn in order to incorporate them into heavy metal. And a couple of days ago, I was at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I got in my car and I played all the 1980s stuff from Kiss, what Paul Stanley did when he was really on top of the game. And I was singing things like 1,000,000 from Lick It Up, or I'll Fight Hell to Hold You from the Crazy Nights album, which I find a fantastic album for what it is. And it's very high what he did. It is almost as high as what I do with screams on the metal albums. And for the first time in my life, I could almost nail these vocal parts. And I mean, when you can do it once, you know that you can do it. You just have to find a regular approach to it. Do it more often, and one day it will become possible. And ever since I did this, my singing, which I do for the tour, which is coming up in 2 weeks, is getting easier and easier all the time, because that's not as high as that. And therefore I try to just joyfully do whatever I like in order that it gets my voice. It's not more power, it's more relaxation. The more relaxed you do it, the more open your vocal cords get, the more space there is, and the more volume you have. It's easy, but it's very tricky to find.
Yeah, I honestly thought this is your best vocal record ever. I don't think you've ever sounded this good on any other album. This is your best album, and to be honest with you, I think it's the band's best album all around.
Thank you very much, and I do the same mistake again and say I strongly believe the same, actually. It's a fantastic album, and I mean, why shouldn't I say so? I mean, it entertains me when I listen to it. I think it's good. The songs are enough into the same direction and diverse enough so that it's not boring. So it's an album that you can play from track 1 to 10, and you will say, wow, it's really already over, and that's a good sign.
I agree. And let me ask you this, speaking of good signs, what are some of the best advices that you have received in your career that has helped you, got you to the point where you currently are in?
Ooh. That might be the best question I've heard ever. I don't know. Let me think for a second. I mean, if you ask me what advice would you give other people, that's easier. But what advice have I been given? Ross the Boss once said, Patrick, you need to be more cool than you are. And that was right when he said that, because 15 years ago, there's been many things that could knock my mood down. So I learned that it's not that much that can put a strain on me anymore. And you need that if you want to go on tour. I mean, there's lots of things that you have to pre-finance, and there's always risks that you take, and you never know whether it will turn out well or not. And how can you sleep at night when you do all that? I mean, you grow into it, and then after a while, it just doesn't matter. It's will I go to the grocery store? Will I get this or will I get that? Do I invest that money into this or do I invest that money into that? I mean, it's a decision that you just take, and then you follow it, and therefore maybe that has been something that Ross taught me. And otherwise, I mean, there's always people who say, follow your gut, follow what you feel is right. That is maybe something that I've heard from quite some people. And just, oh yeah, there's one thing. It's a quote from Blackie Lawless. Strangely, that has really sort of inspired me or helped me in the last years. Blackie Lawless once said, you will never make it in music if there is a plan B or anything else that you could do. And looking at me right now in my life, for the first time ever, I have the feeling that I have done everything else outside of music that I probably wanted to do. And there is not much left which I really think could do otherwise. So maybe if Blackie is right, you never know, that's the moment where I totally will find enough work in music to do music only. So that if that is true, what he told, then this is probably the best advice I've ever been given. Not given personally, but I've heard it.
I think there's some truth to it, because the moment you have a plan B, you're not going to put the same effort and focus on plan A. I think that's just human nature.
I think so, and Arnold Schwarzenegger said this in a motivational speech as well. He said with his wonderful accent, "I really hate plan B." But he's right, and he's a smart man. I think it was very right what he said. As you put it, if you have a plan B, you also invest your power in plan B, which means you don't invest it in plan A. It's plain and simple. But it's very human, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very human. I got to ask you, since you're going on tour in a couple of weeks, what's your favorite song to perform live?
Interestingly, at this moment, I mean, we will have like a 40 or 45-minute slot, so we're definitely not playing all the songs that we would love to play. So I can't fully answer this, because there is songs like Gates of Atlantia, which we would love to play, but you can't do a 7-minute song in a 40-minute slot, otherwise there is no space for other songs. So that might be one of my favorites. Out of whatever we do at this moment, there is the song called A Kingdom of Hammers and Kings, which we will do in the current short set, because this song is very much based on groove, and with having Günd on the bass now for 3 years or so, what he did with Dolph together is by far the most vivid groove that we ever had on any song so far, and therefore I think in a way that might be my favorite song this very moment. It has three very, very high screams, which scared me to death at first when I thought I would have to do this every evening. And for Christ's sake, I really don't know why, these screams are fucking easy to do, while other things at the same height are killing me. These screams always work, so maybe it's just at the proper point in the melody, so it's no problem at all. I'm very much looking forward to doing this song. That's one of my faves at this moment.
Last question for you. If you were stuck in a desert island and you could only take one metal record with you, which one would you take?
Wow. Oh, that's really brutal. I mean, we all know that answers to these questions might differ every day, and the first thought was, damn it, it's a metal record, I would like to take some Rush with me, but if it's a metal record, Well, that question is really killing me. I mean, maybe it should be a Judas Priest album. If it was Priest, it would be either Sad Wings or Stained Glass. Maybe I Cannot Live Without Halloween. Yeah, I'm going for a trick answer. I'm taking Halloween's what was the title? United Alive, the thing from the Pumpkins United tour. I will take this one because it's got Kai Hansen, Andy Darris, and Michael Kiske, and it's a 3-disc set, so at least I have plenty of music. It's going to be United Alive.
That's a good answer. At least you have a lot more to listen to.
Yeah.
I love that answer.
It's a great album anyway, but I mean, with metal, oh my goodness, there's so many things that you totally need. I would need a Nevermore album. I need a Halloween album. I need a Priest album. I need at least one Saxon album, and so on. It's tricky, but if I'm to pick today, it's gonna be United Alive.
Well, Titan Fox, thank you very much for your time, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about Hammer King. The best of luck with the release and the tour. Have some fun out there, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure of it.
Absolutely, and I'm still keeping my fingers crossed now that we have a booking agency and things are up and coming, that we might be playing some shows overseas in the future.
That would be amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you for this wonderful time. I
my pleasure. Always my pleasure. Thank you very much. All the best.
All the best. Until the future.